Ladies and gentlemen, in this online training course we will talk about data collection for mobility management. It will be 3 parts. In the first section now we will learn about methods of data collection in principle. So first of all, we have to ask ourselves, what do we want to know when we collect data? And we have different types of knowledge, what we want to generate. First is just describe some phenomenological presentation of characteristics like mobility indicators, which we can get through observations. But mostly we always want to understand some identifying causes and effects, problems, relationships, motives and attitudes of your target population. And in that sense, we have to use some interactive things like surveys, focus groups or any other reportings. But more than this, also we usually want to explain quantifying influences and interactions. So what affects what and how strongly, which type of measures affects behavior in the intended direction, for example, when we want to develop a mobility management plan. And the forecasting also, so we want to estimate which will be the expected effect of specific measures based on the attitudes and arguments of the target population of your measure. Then we have the developing and co-designing. It's another aspect, so that we also get feedback for ideas and different measures to develop in the course of the mobility management, and here to collect some ideas to include in your plan. Therefore, we have also two different types of data to be generated. The one is through observation, so there's no direct contact with your target population, like traffic data. If you're interested in how many people or vehicles are arriving at the site of your company, for example, the load factor of a car park, or any other things like this. And also we can have some behavior data on a limited extent, like recording via smartphone or tracker. If we want to go further, then we need some interaction with your target population that we have to ask the people, because you cannot observe these things. These are almost socio-demographic data, but especially behavior data, and for example route choice, or is the commuter trip combined with other activities or something like this, or attitudes, for example, if you want to ask the attitudes of specific measures. Coming to the methods, when we start with the observation data, first of all, we can do this through manual counting, like just simple paper sheets or some counting machines, handheld machines. Even there is some apps on your smartphone available. Then we have automatic counting, for example, if you have some technical equipment. Sometimes this counting is already established on your entrance on the car park, for example. And if you can also meter over time, so that we can also record the entrance and exit time. Then we have also some information about duration, for example, of parking of clients or employed people in your company. Yeah, the results are then mainly statistic data, like how many cars, how many bicycles, how many pedestrians are entering, leaving in specific time spans. We have a number of cars, or we have the parking duration. Another thing is, when you can also try to observe, is that you can hand out some tours to your clients and ask if they can take them with them, like loggers, or there are apps you can install on the respondent's cell phone, and they can also do some recordings, and then they will be sent to you and you can analyze them. The big advantage is the participants do not need to fill out any forms, it's just recorded, so the burden is very low. Still, there are some technical issues like the battery status or standby modes, then apps could be restricted by mobile phones, But the biggest problem here is the acceptance, that you have to convince the people that these handheld devices are just recording what you tell them and not to spy any other information when you have to this advice at any time with you. But of course there is some limitations in the accuracy, for example. So usually there's some algorithms who try to interpret the data, so which mode you likely used or which route you took, or even other information could be attached automatically, but of course it's not verified by the respondents. So therefore usually you combine this recorded data with other tools of survey, that for example you ask for some socio-demographic information from these persons, or adding other attributes to the trip, like for example a trip purpose could be also asked for, or you also ask for verification of this information. So if there are any mistakes, if the mode is correctly attached, or even you ask directly for the mode he used for a different part of the trip. When you come to this interactive situation where we want to learn about attitudes and behavior data, we can different tools how to get in contact with the people. You see on the table here, it's the face-to-face option, the telephone option, contacting them by email, or using an online survey. And then we have also the question ourselves, do we want to ask multiple attendees at the same time so that we have some interaction in the exchange of information, or we have a one-to-one situation that there is an interview and an interviewed person only. And we can have some semi-structured questions, so there's some flexibility in the question. You just raise a topic and then you discuss it. Or you have structured questionnaire where you have a clear options to answer these questions in a kind of a form style. Yeah, and you can see here the different types you can use. We have focus groups or workshops, then you have more people at the same time and have this interactive process. Then we have the one-to-one situation. You can try to get in contact at home, at the destination, for example, speaking from clients, or at the workplace, at the classroom if you're targeting the employed persons or the students. Or you can also have a recruitment on the street, so in front of the entrance of your company, for example. In principle, this online surveys is the most common tool, and also in GreenPass project we have used online tools, online surveys for gathering the information. In principle, these tools largely replaced the paper and pencil survey, because you have no material costs, no mailing costs, and you do not need to enter the data after you get returned the forms, because the entry is done automatically. There are some technical possibilities when you design your survey, like dynamic filters. So if some questions are not relevant, you can filter them out for specific persons. And you have a little also option for design and display interactively in the forms. The creation is relatively easy. There are some software tools existing. I will just show you an example in the coming slides. And this self-registered, self-administered system, usually the respondents only need a QR code or a link to open the survey, and then he could start. And the good thing is also you can also combine these with telephone interviews, face-to-face interviews, based using a tablet, and you can also use the same style of survey, and you can combine the data also with face-to-face interviews. The disadvantage, of course, is in general in surveys, but especially in online surveys, is the low response rate. Usually you are restricted to people who have access to internet. And of course, on the other hand, you have to be trustful enough that people react on your, for example, email or invitation that this is just a survey and we want to learn about something and want to design a mobility management in your company, that people are really trust in this information and fill in this questionnaire. The recruitment method could be, of course, a bias. Ideally, you have a total email list of your employees, but sometimes it's not accessible, so you try to send out and then ask also people to forward this. And this is also a little bit risk because you can create a kind of echo chamber and you have not the representative feedback on your online survey. So therefore try to announce this survey at different places and through different channels to reach a highly representative population, a good picture of your employees in your company, for example. So this is just an example. If you just give a poster at a bus stop, cyclists and car drivers will not be aware of this invitation for sure, because they will not come across. Another thing is to use Trustful Newsletter. Usually you get not access to the email list, but sometimes you can ask the company to include the invitation in a newsletter which will be sent out to all your employees. Sometimes it's also helpful, as I already mentioned, to combine this online survey with face-to-face tools. For example, if you have some hard-to-reach groups in your company, you have some other problems to get in contact with them, then you can also use these and sending out some interviewers to these persons. So here are some examples. We used the Lime survey tool. That's the design of it, where you can set up this questionnaire and you see some examples, for example, for the behavior data. So we ask, for example, which modes you usually use for accessing your working place on the left side. And the right side, for example, we ask also if your commuting trip is also combined with other activities like shopping or bringing kids to the school or something like this, because this forms the basic for developing some mobility management tools. This is another example for attitudes. Of course, you can also ask for different kind of types of measures, what you have already in mind maybe, or you just want to develop, that if people are supporting or not supporting such measures, like for example improving the situation, the infrastructure for cyclists, or improve the system for the public transport, or whatever possible options are. And of course, usually you ask for socio-demographic data in this survey to also understand the feedback a little bit more. For example, we ask also for the options of doing home office on your workplace. So if, for example, this is mobility relevant data, or even the flexibility of your working time, just starting time or ending time. But it's also very important information for your mobility management design. Here's another example now for stakeholder semi-structured interviews. So we have some open questions here. For example, we also develop and discuss some ideas about mobility management with stakeholders. They are relevant in the implementation process of such measures. And then you can also screen this information across the different stakeholders. We did this in stakeholder mapping. This is an example of one of these measures, because you can also do this on measure-based for this discussion, and then you can screen this here on according to the interest. So is this stakeholder group more supportive or more restricting or skeptic to your measure, and how much is the power of this stakeholder group, so that you can have a clear picture about the process, what you will kick off for this measure, to which persons you have to be very careful and to find a deal with, otherwise maybe the whole measure will not be implemented. There is another example of this. For example, you can see here the different types of stakeholders, and the most critical ones are those who have low interests on the left side, and on the top side with high power. So they have the power to restrict or hinder your project. Here it's an empty box in this case, so this is the good news. But otherwise, you have really to get in contact to these stakeholder groups in a very early stage to find a deal with them. Another example how you can collect data is the online reporting. This is an example from our university. So this is location-based information. So people can tag on a map different aspects they are interested in accordance to the mobility management. For example, they can report problems on the daily mobility. They can make some suggestions for improvements, or they can also just send some ideas. They tag it. This is the color code here you can see on the map on the lower part, and there is then opening a window, and there you can describe what is your idea, what is your problem. And the good thing is when you analyze it, you can already see on the cloud where is a concentration on problems or ideas, and you can then systematically analyze these feedback from the people. So as a conclusion of this section of the presentation, first of all, if you start to create this questionnaire or data collection, first you have to question yourself. So what is the budget you can spend for it? Because you can imagine different types of tools are differently costly and exhaustive in labor resources. Then one very important question is how can I target my population? So how can I get in contact with them to invite them to receive the feedback from them? So is there any lists, any accessibility to these persons to get in contact with them? And then what I want to know from them, so do we discuss about their behavior, their attitudes towards measures, for example? Do we want to collect some ideas, solutions together? This also then develops your design of your survey. Usually you want to know all of these things, and you need a combination of these methods. So thank you very much for this first part, and you were listening to me, and I also will invite you for a second part of my presentation here, and this is then the sampling and the survey design for gathering data for your mobility management. Thank you very much for listening.